With Festival of the Lost back in Destiny 2, I figured this the perfect time to talk about Destiny's most horrifying stories. And I made sure to ask you guys in the community tab on YouTube and on Twitter for suggestions. So make sure you subscribe with the bell on for community chats and follow me on Twitter or X or whatever they call it these days. These stories will deal with lore, community folklore, and some truly spooky sights. This is also a good time to remind you guys that the Crota and Oryx merch will be going away on November 1st. You can pick it up underneath this video, or you can go to my store. You can also pick up some gamer subs using code Evan down below. You guys have been crushing it, and soon I can reveal something special thanks to all the code Evan believers. Now, enjoy some spooky stories. Starting off with 0 Hour. After an already daunting mission fighting through the destruction of the old tower in the hunt to stop the Fallen from stealing Siva, players come to a platforming section. In here was many obstacles, but the scariest of them all was a robot named TR3-VR, or Trevor.
I'm dead!
I activated. There's 4 levers, that's what it is.
What does red mean? It means we're dead! Run! He's behind you! Flash!
Trevor possesses a large, squarish body and had a multitude of scissor-like legs. A sinister red glow and an ominous clicking sound would alert players to its presence. Now, not a lot is known about Trevor, but evidence of it being in the vaults of the tower suggests Trevor was most likely created by the Cryptarchs to guard their vaults. After the fall of the tower, it continued to roam the vaults, killing anything it encountered. It was unknown what happened to it after 0 Hour though, as it most likely remains as it did before, waiting in the dark for its next victim. Next up, we have 2 tokens and a blue, and this will come with a heavy hand of Nightmares itself. In 2017, coming off of the rocky post-launch of Destiny 2, Bungie hosted a stream showcasing the Curse of Osiris' brand new public events.
Now let's check this out. I promised before that this was the most rewarding public event. And there we have it. We have 2 chests. The most rewarding public event.
Anomaly and its mysterious appearance and implications was always so frightening. A Crucible map based around this completely alien object that had links to making the research team around it sick with nightmares. The Anomaly was a completely unknown object which couldn't be identified in any way. In the lore book Revelation, the artifact discovered by the crew of K1 found that it could cause insomnia, nightmares, and hallucinations. Later, Clovis Bray communed with the artifact and was instructed by it to go to Europa in search of a secret that would grant him immortality. He referred to it as Clarity. Originally, Mayhem Rumble was available on Anomaly. However, it was removed from the rotation in Destiny 1 due to frequent crashes, due to how many effects were happening in such a small area. Was it the artifact that messed up the servers? That is for you to wonder. The Drifter may play everything cool, but he once ran into aliens that we still don't know anything about. According to the lore in the ancient Apocalypse robes, Drifter and his crew landed on an icy, unnamed planet where they found alien monoliths that appeared to be ancient facilities. Inside these structures were creatures frozen in cages. While the crew initially wasn't sure about the purpose of these monoliths, they speculated that they might have served as zoos. The discovered creatures seemed related to the Hive, but had a unique property. It emitted an anti-light field similar to a darkness zone. Scans revealed that these were thousands and thousands of creatures on the planet. Despite the crew's initial excitement about their discovery, they soon realized the potential danger of these creatures. Was this the Witness? Was it Rolk? Or something much more ancient and undiscovered? Grasp of Avarice is an honorable mention since this story begins and ends with greed. Pirate Guardians are on the hunt for the loot from the Loot Cave, led by Wilhelm 7. As they venture further and further, Wilhelm becomes increasingly paranoid that his fire team will try to kill him, so he takes matters into his own hands. Another Guardian named Pershing shoots Agadir over a mid-tier pulse rifle he already had.
Day 10. We're deep in the cave system now, and each cavern's richer than the last. Deciding who gets what is tougher than I thought. Pershing shot Agadir over a mid-tier pulse rifle he already had. Agadir's ghost came out hollering, and Pershing damn near shot him too before I stepped in. There are more engrams here than a body could ever need, but nobody wants to part with their cut.
Agadir's ghost comes out hollering, and Pershing damn near shot him too before Wilhelm steps in. Pershing eventually dies, and Agadir's ghost is killed by Wilhelm. Wilhelm forces Agadir to work like a slave, or he will kill him too. Eventually, Wilhelm becomes infected by the greed and kills everyone around him, even shooting himself in the leg to bait out his ghost to kill him too. By the time the player finishes the dungeon, Wilhelm is sitting there with one final message.
Hey, what's that? I hear you sneaking around. You're here to take what's mine. Don't you touch nothing. It's all mine.
Thorn and the infection of Rezalazir's mind. Thorn was once a renowned hand cannon named Rose, known and respected in the Crucible. That was until Rezalazir fought the darkness and was infected by that darkness. He was corrupted and eventually took on the name Dredgen Yor. As Yor, his once beloved Rose became a reflection of his darkened soul. It was transformed into the cursed Thorn. Yor, with his thorn at his side, became infamous for killing other guardians instead of fair play in the Crucible. His descent into madness and his acts of cruelty became legendary. Shin Malfur, another key figure in this tale, was an orphan boy taken under the wing of Jaren Ward, a noble guardian who wielded the iconic hand cannon, The Last Word. However, Jaren Ward met his end at the hands of Dredgen Yor and his thorn. Shin, seeking revenge for his mentor's death, confronted Yor when he grew up. In their final duel, Shin Malfur channeled his light and used the last word to kill Dredgen Yor.
I don't have to. You're killing yourselves.
Putting an end to the reign of terror. While Yor's story ended with his death, his legacy lived on. A group known as the Shadows of Yor sought to harness the power of Thorn without succumbing to its darkness. Believing that Dredgen Yor's path had some misunderstood wisdom, you could say this was a happy ending, but unfortunately, Thorn has a lot more bad endings later in this video. The Mask of Bakris has a terrifying tale of how it was formed. A voice guides Atrax through a process of confronting an imposter wearing a mask that represents hers. Despite initial resistance, Atrax is urged to physically remove the mask from the imposter, revealing it as just a facade. The guide promises to cleanse the mask, ensuring that when others wear it, Atrax will recognize it as just a mask and not to be deceived by its appearance. In reality, this voice is a surgeon, or perhaps the darkness itself, removing Atrax's skin from her face before she takes on her new appearance in the raid as an exo named Atrax 1. With a new body, she recognizes that the old body she once wore was just an imposter. The person she is talking to says she will clean the mask, and now knows that when she sees others wearing the mask, she will know they are those very same imposters. Just to add on to the horror, the face is then cleaned and wrapped around a helmet, and then is given to others, so she could see other Fallen wearing her face. It's just disgusting. So many of you guys suggested the Glykon, and for good reason too, since this story is horrifying. Trapped aboard the twisted and decaying Glykon, Catabasis, a guardian, and others, including a cabal named Bato and an entity called Kinzik, attempt to sever a mysterious link and escape the ship's corruptive influences. Over time, the Guardian's ghost, Gilgamesh, becomes disillusioned and resentful towards the endless cycle of death and rebirth. As the oppressive weight of the ship's malevolent force and the relentless scorn enemies bear down on them, the bond between the Guardian and his ghost frays. In a chilling climax, a despondent Gilgamesh confronts Catabasis, and, unable to bear their torturous existence any longer, urges the Guardian to end their connection. In a tragic confrontation, Catabasis fires upon his ghost, severing their bond forever. The Cultists of Nezarec is a potential foreshadow into some gripping horror. Throughout the gear of Root of Nightmares, we see the stories of multiple characters with a connection to Nezarec. These worshippers get indoctrinated by a man named Michael, a human male whose family has worshipped Nezarec for generations. One of these indoctrinees is an Elixni named Caraxus, a fallen captain who plundered from Nezarec's corpse an eye. The Eye of Nezarec gave him so much paranoia that he eventually tossed it over an asteroid in the reef. It seems he may have been recruited by Aramis during the Season of the Plunder's hunt for the relics, but he failed in his mission. Later, at his catch, he was awakened by Michael. Another is a scion named Acacia, whose mate was stolen by Nezarec's cultist. The purpose is that his powerful psionic abilities will feed Nezarec through his torment. She didn't trust Michael when he first approached her, and he was aware of her hatred for him. But Michael told her that hatred is exactly what Nezarec wants. He told her that if she helps him restore Nezarec and prove her loyalty and worth to him, he might return her mate to her. Another is actually a former Sunbreaker called Briar of the Wild Brambles. Nezarec caused him so much torment and anguish, he would stab out his own eyes just so he could stop seeing the visions. When the Titan's ghost, Thorn, kept healing him, he killed his own ghost. It was the last thing he would ever see before throwing away his sight. Michael found Briar in a cave, and crazy enough, Briar wanted to feel Nezarec's full power once more. He had gotten so used to Nezarec tormenting him that he craved it, because there's nothing else but an empty void that he feels. Michael is the latest in a long line of Nezarec followers. His family has worshipped him since before the Golden Age. Throughout the generations, an heirloom was passed down, a leather-bound tome containing symbols and images related to Nezarec. This is the same tome Michael carries with him when he recruits. Michael himself is also a victim of Nezarec. His reverence is the product of being raised in an abusive and indoctrinated household, one where his parents had him bound in chains and subjected to Nezarec's torment. The Necrotic Grips may have one of the best use cases in Destiny, but one of the most horrific lore entries I have ever seen. Researchers led by Warlock Janna 14 study artifact H349, or Thorn, a mysterious and powerful relic with necrotic properties. Despite the artifact's ominous reputation, the team pushes forward, using it on cattle and observing its deadly effects. Janna recorded her log that some of her colleagues on the project questioned if it was right to study such a vile weapon, but she believed that they needed to do so in order to understand their foes. 3 days later, and the team conducted their first test firing, using cattle as targets. The animals were large enough to survive the initial shot, but Janna was highly disturbed by the resulting suffering and death, and decided against further animal testing. On day 30 of the project, Janna recorded frustration in her journal over how little progress they were making. She noted that it was not typical hive tech, and that spectral analysis of Thorn turned up nothing. She lamented that the Shadows of Yore were little more than a cult, but had managed to mass-produce copies. But the research team could not even determine what it was made from. The next day, Thorn accidentally discharged another researcher. Caro was hit by the discharge. He was a lightless human, and thus unable to be saved by the corruption. While upset at the loss of life, Janna noted that they now had something more to study, and that Caro's dying words had included, "I'm reborn," which she had thought sounded almost happy. The Vanguard forbid a post-mortem autopsy, but Janna and several other members of the staff refused to allow Caro's death to be in vain, and conducted one in secret, which produced useful results. Janna secretly kept tissue samples from the autopsy and recorded that it was almost like having Caro around again. In her words on the corruption, quote, "Much like a viper, its bite does not bring about instant death. Instead, its venom cajoles. It co-opts your beating heart into a death clock, ticking down your last moments. Your own pulse will kill you. The decaying skin samples of her colleagues she wanted to study, those are placed on the Necrotic Grip. Exclamation point letting go was a very weird video. This has what looks to be Rasputin hanging by half of his body, which looks a lot like the Season of the Seraph Rasputin, or Rasputin the Exo from the olden days. But this video was made years before even Vanilla Destiny's release. Its message is so creepy. This Morse code translates to, "Take up your arms, my children. Take up your arms and embrace your destiny." This video is definitely still a mystery, and one that horrifies fans to this very day. We may never get an answer to this story. Osteo Striga is part 2 of Janna 14's horrible story. After Janna 14's Necrotic Grip experiment, she began to get corrupted further by proximity to Thorn. Her audio logs began to include her talking appreciatively about the weapon's method of slowly killing through corruption. She began to be annoyed by Yaniv, another researcher on the team who continued crying over the loss of Caro, and arranged for another, quote, accidental discharge to hit them. And after the team realized that Thorn was hungry and needed to be fed to provide more useful data, Janna took note of that. Janna closely monitored Yaniv's degradation as they died, pleased with how poetic and elegant the process seemed, but lamented that she had not had the scanners recording at the moment of discharge. 12 days later, she ensured there was another shooting, and that the lab's scanners were on for that one. The project site was eventually evacuated, and Janna's audio logs were recovered, although her fate and whereabouts are still unknown. After an unknown period of time later, Janna would either create or discover the Osteo Striga, another weapon of sorrow. Janna would either create or discover the Osteo Striga. By this point, her state of mind had degraded even further, to the point where she began to feel a maternal instinct towards the weapon, and would constantly refer to the Osteo Striga as her child, and feeding victims to its ravenous poison. This is probably why Osteo Striga tracks to enemies, and every time you get a kill, you are feeding the gun. Janna is currently wanted by the Vanguard for escaping with the original Striga, and seemingly engaging in ritual murder to feed it. Will she ever be caught? Or will you keep feeding her power? Did I miss anything you guys wanted to see? Would you like to see a part 2 on these creepy stories one day? Happy Halloween, everyone. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.